Hi gents, and welcome back to the channel. Today Hey, what happened to my space background? We are not doing that again. I nearly threw up the last time. Well, excuse me for thinking that a guy who literally floats everywhere he moves can handle some zero-G. I can't defy gravity if there is no gravity.
Will you two stop arguing? I'm trying to figure out what happens to the Space Bug King.
Right, so without further ado, this is My Clone is a Spacebug King. The chapter begins where we last left off. Zhao Fei is back in his original body. Down an arm, down a ship, down everything, and he's trapped on a planet with a bunch of alien dinosaurs. Zhao Fei notices immediately that the bigger dinosaurs are using the corpses of the smaller dinosaurs, gathering them up and transporting them. So he decides to hide inside one of them in order to get transported with him. I suppose that's just as good a plan as any, but that also seems very risky, if you know what I mean. Zhao Fei and the corpses are taken to this large turtle dragon, who apparently is using them to create some kind of soup for the Dragon King. Thankfully for Zhao Fei, this dragon turtle seems to have very poor eyesight, so despite being in clear view, he does manage to escape the grasp, and escape being thrown into soup. But then he's immediately caught by several other dragons. Well, goodbye, Zhao Fei. It was nice knowing you. Oh no, Zhao Fei, why does this keep happening to you?
This guy rolled that once multiple times on luck.
Stop acting fake surprised so you can cover up the fact that you snuck this background back in without my noticing. So poor Zhao Fei ends up getting chased by hundreds of dragons all at once. But through what can only be described as cartoon shenanigans, he ends up flopping and ends up right in the pot of blood soup that the dragon turtle was making.
Other dragons try to stop the dragon, but then get interrupted by Super Big Daddy Dragon right there.
I think that's what they refer to when they say bad dragon. No, that's not. But this is the next best thing. Whatever he is, he's a servant of the Dragon King, who got injured during the massive explosion of the base that killed Zhao Fei. And even though he was injured, the dragon was still alive, and he needed to be healed. Plans might have been delayed, but they weren't stopped because he has Princess Wee Wee. Even with the penis princess in custody, his injuries were far too significant to ignore. So he's forced to rehabilitate and recover. But his quote-unquote star power is at risk, because while he's recovering, anyone could steal it. And it just so happens that Zhao Fei is entering his bloody bubble bath.
And immediately falls unconscious.
Oh, my storytelling intuition is telling me exactly where this story is going. So the power that he's going to get in order to become the most strongest insect ever isn't going to actually be his power. With his body in the tank, oh, he's going to siphon the Dragon King's power. Oh, this is positively evil scandalous. Well, I guess it can't avoid all the Menghua tropes at this point. I mean, he's got to be the most powerful somehow. At least this gives a solid explanation of where all of his extra superpowers come from eventually. Zhao Fei eventually does wake up, but he's back in his bug body. After lamenting about how much he misses having his arms, he realizes that this means he must have two bodies. So technically, he has a secondary body to spare if something happens to the other one. Of course, given the situation of his human body, yeah, the odds are not in his favor. But one thing is for certain, both bodies need sustenance, and his bug body is feeling a bit peckish. He remembers the creature that they gave him that would be his lunch, and so he goes to investigate the little moth boy. That is a boy, right? I genuinely can't tell.
I don't think it matters if the thing's gonna be lunch.
True. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case, as Zhao Fei tries to eat it, but he doesn't particularly like the taste. And the creature is whining and crying so much that he just feels uncomfortable. So instead he just kind of kicks it out of his house and closes the door. The little moth thinks that this is his lucky break, and actually celebrates before remembering he's at the heart of the Wasp's empire. And even though Zhao Fei has no intention of eating him, The other wasps don't necessarily share the same opinion. So, not wanting to be inside these beautiful women the wrong way, he begs Zhao Fei to let him back in. It's the circle of life. Slimy, yet oh so satisfying.
Do you wanna build a snowman?
That is the wrong Disney movie and you know it! Well, Zhao Fei does let the little moth back in. But he has no interest in protecting him. On top of that, he's still hungry. But that's when the moth decides to make a bit of a deal. In exchange for protection to get him back home, he will have his sister make some delicious puffin bowls for Zhao Fei to eat. Zhao Fei sees this as a reasonable compromise, and so escorts the little moth back to his home.
Along the way, Zhao Fei and the little moth have a bit of a bonding moment, and they start to become friends. And the little moth brags about how much he loves his big sister. Only for them to get home and they see this giant wasp lady beating up said sister, as she's begging and pleading for her brother back, but they said they already sold him off to be food for someone else. Zhao Fei recognizes how cruel it is, and the little moth runs to his sister saying that he's alright.
Mud Wasp wonders how the little moth managed to get away and escape even though she knows she sold him off to be food. And then she takes some weird sexual delight in wanting to punish the little moth? Ah, I see. The return of the Y-boner. With a vengeance. I'm more shocked at the fact that there's the existence of bug slavery.
Well, considering that they're willing to cannibalize and eat each other, I'm assuming that slavery isn't really too far out there.
Well, Zhao Fei finally interjects with this and tells the mud wasp to back off. But the mud wasp seems to recognize Zhao Fei's authority and immediately folds. Folded her like an omelet. She's practically begging for mercy, which he does grant, and forces her to leave and never come back. She does so, but then she starts putting pieces together that they really don't want to be put together. Like, why is a drone wasp, the only drone wasp, a young no-star drone wasp, alone by himself without armed guards surrounding him? This is strange and out of the ordinary, but she seems to love this surprise opportunity.
Meanwhile, Min Min and Man Man go to visit Zhao Fei only to realize he upped and dipped. And Beely is very angry because he was explicitly told not to go anywhere without them. And now we see why.
No, when they originally said that he needs to stay indoors and not leave without protection, I assumed that was because of actual predators. Nobody said anything about the sexual predator kind. We at Gentlemen's Chats do not condone child abuse. We do, however, find it hilarious. Well, we cut back to Zhao Fei as he's chilling with his insect friends, and he soon learns that his words hold a lot of power when he says that the food that he's eating is delicious, but it would taste better with some meat, and they interpret it as, sacrifice your flesh to me, which he immediately corrects them at.
Yes, but are they really friends if he's not willing to sacrifice an arm or a leg to feed the bro?
But we never find out the answer to that question as Dommy Waspy Mommy returns, this time bringing some muscle, and they make their intentions clear. They're here to kidnap Zhao Fei and the moths. Zhao Fei attempts to fight back, but he soon realizes that just because you're the protagonist doesn't mean you've got that power-up bullshit. No solo leveling powers for you. He gets folded like an omelet. Mommy Waspy Mommy is pleased at the outcome and takes all three of them hostage, taking them to the ground below. Though the perversion jokes aside, it is kind of a nice feeling having a protagonist that can't just immediately snap his fingers and all of a sudden all of his problems just go away. I know, right? I mean, how many overpowered main character protagonists do we need that can beat Goku?
I don't know. That sounds pretty hypocritical, Mr. Child of Chaos.
Hey, I'll have you know that there's a reason why Quacko is so overpowered in that series. Besides, we have Dog Knight, and he's completely underpowered. So while they're in the box being taken to the ground floor, Little Moth informs us the history of the Insect Islands. Apparently, they used to own the entire planet, but then the dragons attacked. There was a big war, but the insects lost, forcing them to retreat to anywhere they could find safe. It didn't really matter as long as it was away from the dragons, since insects can survive in some of the more hostile places. The wasps took to the skies, but the mud wasps took to the ground, living in caves and dens, and that's where they're being taken.
Get to ground level, and the mud wasps immediately put Zhao Fei in restraints. They take him to their kingdom, which Zhao Fei sees the mud wasps have a habit of enslaving other insect races. But they clearly have something special in mind for Zhao Fei.
As he's being surrounded by other feminine mud wasps, they explain their plan is because Zhao Fei is the main drone of the Wasp Kingdom of the sky, they plan to mate with him, have his babies, and grow in numbers and power, even possibly giving birth to a new queen for their hive with the power of a king.
Yeah! What are you, gay?
Zhao Fei does put on a brave face and even throws in a zinger, but unfortunately he just doesn't understand the position he's in. He's not in any real danger, but he's in big danger. And that was My Clone is a Spacebug King, chapters 4, 5, and 6. And I do have to admit, Death by Snoo Snoo was not on my bucket list when picking up this series. It's actually quite astonishing that this series manages to pull off incredibly wholesome and yet hypersexualized at the same time the way it does.
Gives us so much information in the story, yet at the same time not enough.
This Isekai is definitely different. It's not often where you see our main protagonist of an Isekai get trapped in not one but two worlds, especially at the same time. Remember, his human body is still over at the dragons. Oh, trust me, I have not forgotten that. But what I also found out is the fact that his power system is based off of stealing the power from the Dragon King. I wonder how that'll affect his human body as well as his insect.
Personally, I'm more curious as to what Princess Wee Wee has integral to this story.
I don't know, maybe this is a Bowser situation and he just wants to fuck her? I'm not ruling that off the table, but I highly doubt that's the reason. She might very well have star energy herself that we don't know about. Regardless, only time will tell if Zhao Fei is able to keep his virginity or not. But until then, I'm Rehash, the stirrer of chaos. I'm Gent, the organizer of chaos.
And I'm Decipher, the ruler of chaos.
And we'll see you all next time.